The philosophy taught by the Upanishads has been the source of solace to minds like Schopenhauer, and the human intellect has not been able to conceive of anything more noble or sublime in the history of the world. It is indeed necessary that in reviewing a work of this kind, all prejudices and preconceptions should be carefully avoided. But it looks somewhat strange when a learned scholar like Mr. Go, with all apparent zeal, to deal impartially and without prejudice and preconception with the philosophy of the Upanishads, declares that there is little that is spiritual in all this, and that this empty intellectual conception void of spirituality is the highest product the Indian mind is capable of. His notion of the spiritual must not be higher than the anthropomorphism of dogmatic Christianity, for otherwise he would not have found merely low thoughts in high words in a body of teaching which neither Kant nor Hegel would in substance be able to surpass. It is a pity. It is pity. It is pity that our Orientalists do not allow themselves to be free from the very prejudices and preconceptions against which they preach with so much vehemence and zeal. Even the great Max Muller, the greatest of Oriental scholars, and the professed follower and worshipper of Kant, solemnly asserts in his Hibbert's lectures that the Advaita is that stage in the development of the human mind which will lead to the philosophical ideal taught by Christianity. The chronology of the Old Testament has in like manner influenced almost all the speculations of Oriental scholars in regard to the possible date of the Vedas and the Upanishads. It is very difficult to say anything with positive confidence on this subject, but this much is certain, that the Upanishads, at least the 10 principal ones, are not in any way posterior to the Vedas. The argument that a philosophy like that embodied in the Upanishads cannot exist side by side with the nature worship of the Vedas loses its force when the suktas of the Veda are regarded as symbolic only of those esoteric truths which were taught through the Upanishads to the select few. Symbology helps the solution of many a riddle over which philology has either sat in despair or which it has understood only to misunderstand. The history of all the great religions of the world shows that there is nothing inconsistent in the possible existence of a sublime philosophy with the empty formalities of popular religion. And this circumstance in itself is an indirect argument against the later origin of the Vedas and the Upanishads. Veda means knowledge, and Upanishad means both the exoteric philosophy of Brahma, the Advaita, and sittings for the discussion of that philosophy. The Upanishads are aptly called the Vedanta, the end of the Veda, that which is reserved for those who have freed themselves from the useless bonds of formal religion. The Veda consists of 3 parts: mantra, brahmana, and Upanishad, including the Arankyas. The mantra portion contains hymns addressed to various powers, all symbolic of important truths intended, on the other hand, to teach the religion of faith and forms to the ignorant, and the philosophy of sublime unity to the initiated on the other. The one is the Karma Marga, the religion of forms, and the other is the Jnana Marga, the religion of philosophy or knowledge. There is a way between the two, leading from karma to jnana, called Upa sana, or the invoking of any particular power of nature. This is different from the general karma marga, inasmuch as karma does not mean anything performed with a special aim and for a special purpose. Karma marga is only the general religion of faith which leads to upasana and jnana. The word karma should in this place not be confounded with that philosophical law of necessity which is called by that name. The Upanishads teach the philosophy of absolute unity. By unity is meant the oneness of the subject, all experience of objective existence being regarded as in and of it. Experience implies consciousness, and consciousness, apperception or pure reason, is the only reliable, self-illumined, absolute factor of our knowledge. All else is but mere representation in and through the mode of this consciousness. The world of being is nothing considered apart from consciousness, which, in its turn, is entirely independent of experience. It cannot in any manner be negatived, for the very negation implies its existence. This is the realm of the absolute, ever-existent Brahman, an abstraction appropriately expressing this idea of unity in duality, being a term expressive of the whole of that which can be none other than a compound of thought and being. This absolute is not the unknowable of agnosticism, nor the inexplicable atom of materialism. Materialism is in fact out of question, inasmuch as the absolute of the Upanishad is not a result of organization nor a property of matter. It is something always independent of everything and self-illumined, self-subsistent. It is everywhere, but for it the world of experience is nowhere. But the agnostic, who stands halfway between materialism and transcendentalism, identifies the absolute with the unknowable and makes it the source of all that translates itself into experience. This doctrine is entirely untenable, for that which is unknowable is not the absolute, but that which produces the various modifications and representations of it through experience. That something which is and is not known per se by the very law of consciousness, not permitting such knowledge, is the unknowable par excellence. But to describe the fountain of knowledge, absolute consciousness, which is seen in daily individual experience, as the unknowable or even the unknown, would at least be a strange perversion of metaphysical language. The effect of this philosophy on practical ethics is immense. Any system of ethics not based on some clearly demonstrated world idea falls short of practical use, and is pro tanto a deviation from the path of adequately fulfilling the object of existence. The variety of experience is not real, nay, even experience itself is nowhere from the point of the absolute. To lead that life wherein the variety of experience does not affect either for weal or woe is the highest practical rule of conduct in accordance with the proper aim of existence. This does not imply entire inertia, as Mr. Go and others would understand it. The variety of experience creates distinction and sets up false limits where there exists none. Pain and pleasure, good and evil, virtue and vice, merit and sin are all conventions based on this variety of experience and admitted for the sake of that experience. But in the absolute, no such distinctions are possible, and the highest bliss, which cannot be described in words other than those implying negation of everything positive known to us, consists in forgetting this source of separateness and realizing that unity, which is the very being and nature of the cosmos. And more than this philosophy holds, that the individual is a copy of the great cosmos, and that through the unity of the two in the absolute there is always possible an easy way from the one to the other. When the sense of separateness is killed out, The absolute in the individual and the microcosm is at once understood as the macrocosm. Pain and pleasure, evil and good, are all merged in the unity of the absolute, where all is that indescribable something which is neither pleasure nor pain, but something supremely sublime and happy, so to speak. This process of killing out the idea of separateness is no inertia, so far as ordinary language is understood, and though it may not be that blind submission to the will of an anthropomorphic deity, it is certainly the highest possible activity and energy on a superior plane. It is not neglect of duty, nor renunciation of the world either. It is mere forgetting of self and its environments. This is moksha. Moksha in the Christian sense is a something to be achieved. In the Upanishad, it is already achieved. Every being is one with the Absolute, is in fact the Absolute. What is to be achieved is destruction of the sense of separateness, which being accomplished, moksha is easily realized. The disregard of this vital difference between the two ideas has led Mr. Go and many other Orientalists to regard the moksha of the Vedanta and the nirvana of the Buddhists as something bordering on pure inertia or entire annihilation. The illusion theory is another puzzle in the way of many, and Mr. Go has rightly raised his voice against Colebrooke and others who wanted to set it down to later interpolation. That this is not so will be evidently from the text of the Upanishads, but a suggestion by the way may be usefully given. Experience is endless, and this endless variety creates distinctions which lead to the sense of separateness. All that is illusion in the phenomenal is only these distinctions or limitations and the sense of separateness created by them. The basis or substratum of the illusion cannot be said to be nothing nor something. It is as indescribable as the absolute and is known to be. It is as indescribable as the absolute and is known to be, though never apart from or outside of the absolute. Many students of Indian philosophy, enamored of the idea of moksha taught by it, seek to achieve it by various processes, physical or mental, generally known as yoga. Those who do so without being fully saturated with the spirit and substance of the Upanishads merely take a leap in the dark and court certain death, spiritual as well as physical. The first requisite is proper familiarity with the first principles of Advaita philosophy, Shravana, and entire love with them, Manana. Then follows that sublime state wherein the sense of separateness is being slowly forgotten. But even here, nothing but strict practice of the noble virtues. And perfect altruism will be necessarily required of the student. The value of these pages to those who seek knowledge is simply incalculable. I have no time to enter into a critical examination of the translation, but I trust it is sufficient to give to any careful student a pretty clear idea of what he most urgently wants. Mr. Tukaram Tatia has certainly laid the public under deep obligation by placing Dr. Rohr's, Cowell's, and Rajendralal Mitra's translations within reach of all. And the Secretary and members of the Asiatic Society have done no small service to the public by readily according permission to our enterprising and energetic friend for publishing the same. MND. Nadiad, 1st May 1891. Salutation to the Supreme Soul, Hari Om. This world, verily, was before the creation of the world, soul alone and nothing else, whatsoever active or non-active. He reflected, let me create the worlds. He created these worlds, viz., the sphere of water, the sphere of the sunbeams, the sphere of death, and the sphere of the waters. The sphere of water lies above the heavens. The heavens are its resting place. The sphere of the sunbeams, the atmosphere, the earth, the world of death, the worlds which are beneath it, are the sphere of the waters. He reflected, these worlds indeed are created. Let me create the protectors of worlds. Taking out from the waters a being of human shape, he formed him. He heated him by the heat of his meditation. When he was thus heated, the mouth burst out as the egg of a bird. From the mouth, speech, from speech, fire. Agni, the presiding deity of speech. The nostrils burst out, from the nostrils breath, from breath. The wind, Vayu, the presiding deity of breath. The eyes burst out, from the eyes sight. From the sight, the sun, Aditya, the presiding deity of the eye. The ears burst out, from the ears hearing. From hearing, the quarters, the presiding deities of the ear. The skin burst out, from the skin the hairs. From the hairs, the annual herbs and the regions of the forest, the trees. The presiding deities of the hairs of the body. The heart burst out, from the heart the mind, from the mind the moon, the presiding deity of the mind. The navel burst out, from the navel the vital air which goes downwards, from this death, the presiding deity of the descending vital air. The organ of generation burst out, from the organ of generation, seed, from the seed the waters, the presiding deities of the seed. When created, those gods fell into this great ocean of the world, the last cause of which is ignorance. On this account, the world of the gods does not give absolute liberation. Him, the first male, the cause of the different places, organs and presiding deities, he, the supreme soul, had attacked by hunger and thirst. They, as his parts, assailed by hunger and thirst, spoke to him, the first male, the creator, do prepare for us a sphere of rest, wherein abiding we may eat food. He brought the cow to them, after having taken it out of the waters and formed it as before. They said, this is verily not sufficient for us. He brought the horse to them. They said, this is verily not sufficient for us. He brought them man. They said, well done in truth. Therefore man alone is well formed. He said to them, enter him, each according to his sphere. Fire becoming speech entered the mouth, wind becoming breath entered the nostrils, the sun becoming sight entered the eyes, the quarters becoming hearing entered the ears, the annual herbs and regions of the forest becoming hairs entered the skin, the moon becoming mind entered the heart, death becoming the vital air which goes downwards entered the navel, the water becoming seed entered the organ of generation. Hunger and thirst spoke to him. Do thou prepare for us places. He said to them, I will give you a share in those deities. I will make you partakers with them. Therefore, to whatever deity clarified butter is offered, hunger and thirst are partakers with him. Therefore, to whatever deity clarified butter is offered, hunger and thirst are partakers with him. He reflected, those worlds and protectors of the worlds have been created. Let me now create food for them.